Good afternoon, everyone. I think this is our last breakout session of the day before we come back, all assemble back here. This is going to be the Equity and Responsible Use panel. And I have four esteemed people joining me today. So I have Amy Sprung from Microsoft. And I have Ron Schmelzer from Cognilytica. And I have Krista, she is a senior director at Gartner. And I have Roxy, who is a councilwoman for the city of Bowie. So thank you all for joining me today. So the purpose of this panel is to discuss ethical considerations, data privacy issues, potential biases associated with development and application of AI technology. So that's why we are here today. So I'm looking forward to kind of digging into this because I feel like it's a bit of a hot topic. People have a lot of concerns and considerations, like the general public has concerns, and I think, you know, as government employees, people want to understand how to responsibly implement these AI technologies into their daily work. So I'll start with you, Amy. What would you say about how to implement AI responsibly and also equitably?
Hi everyone, Amy Sprung from Microsoft. Thanks for toughing it out to the last session. You guys deserve gold stars. So Microsoft has had an Office of Responsible AI since 2017. It's been a huge priority for us, and there's a large group of people at Microsoft that's their whole job, is just thinking about how do we deploy AI responsibly. Ethically is another word. We like the word responsible more because I think it puts the human in it. Should I give just a few comments of sort of how we think about responsible AI?
Absolutely,
Okay.
please.
So our approach to responsible AI is built on six key principles, and none of this will sort of seem obvious when we say it, but I find it gives structure to all the things that we think about sort of trickling down from applications. So we think about fairness, reliability and safety, privacy and security, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. And so, and we have lots of materials. Again, I said earlier, I'll post some links to my LinkedIn page so that if anyone wants to find them, or feel free to connect with me there. But we have a framework document. We have a bunch of tools, I'll call them, that sort of help in thinking and considering responsible AI. There's a great impact survey that if you're building out a solution using AI, you might want to run through and sort of, it asks you all the hard questions, like things that you need to be thinking about when you're building a solution. So anyways, it's just an example of one of the tools. So Microsoft has, I think there's over 30 different tools like that we make available, we want you to use, we want you to replicate. We feel like we've been thinking about this for a while, and so hopefully you guys can learn from our best practices.
That is awesome, thank you. So Ron, please tell us how Cognilytica is a key player in this space in terms of equity and responsibility.
Great.
Responsible use, I'm sorry.
Trying to make it work. Well, great. Well, everybody, thank you so much for being here. One of the things that we do at Cognilytica, in addition to also hosting the AI Today podcast, is Kathleen and I are also members of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's Trustworthy AI Framework team. So a number of governmental bodies around the world are working together to come up with laws and regulations and policies to help make AI more trustworthy. So the terminology that's in use by some of the government organizations is around trustworthy AI. And it turns out there's about 5 different layers of trustworthy AI. There's at the top layer these ethical concerns, which are basically machines shouldn't do any harm, that we shouldn't cause any problems in society, we shouldn't make the existing problems in society even worse and accelerated by AI. That's in that ethical layer of AI. Then we have this responsible layer of AI, which has to do with just because the technology is usable and maybe neutral, that doesn't mean that we may always use it in the right way. So for example, facial recognition It's one thing to use it to unlock our phones. It's another thing to be using it to identify people in ways that we shouldn't be using to identify people. So that's the responsible versus irresponsible use of AI. Many other aspects of responsible use of AI around things like data privacy, data sharing. Then we have this third layer around transparency, which has to do with knowing what goes into the AI systems, especially since AI systems are so dependent on data that if we have biased data, that will produce biased results. If we don't know how the AI systems are being used, for example, did you know that your resume might be seen by an HR system? And if we have no visibility into that, then we have some lack of transparency into how that works. We also have a lot of lack of accountability. And even now, we're starting to see lack of consent, which is the ability to know if you're walking into a building and there are AI systems all around you, do you even know that they are there? Do you have to consent to their use? Are there disclosure rules? Then the lower layer below that is what's called governed AI, which is putting in policies and practices in place to keep track and monitor AI systems, especially if they can cause safety, security risks, cause all sorts of various harms. There's no such thing, as we say with AI, as set it and forget it. That doesn't work very well. Move fast and break things is also not a great thing with AI. So they have to kind of move away from that. At the very lowest levels for the trustworthy AI framework is what's called explainable AI, which is trying to understand how these AI systems work, how do they get to their various decisions, and can we do anything about that, which are more of a technical nature. So that's at the high level, but I will pass the mic on and let others share their awesome insights.
Thank you. Krista, please tell us how Gartner is a key player. Is it Gartner research?
Yes, Gartner. So we have Gartner Research, Gartner Consulting, and we are all one Gartner. I think one of my colleagues earlier was on the research side, and I'm on the consulting side. So yes, Gartner.
Okay.
We're all one big team. So
Okay, great.
yeah. Sorry, the question.
How is Gartner Consulting operating in the AI space as it pertains to, like, how are you consulting clients on how to use AI equitably and responsibly?
Yes, absolutely. So, so Gartner, I mentioned we're all one big team, and Gartner Research is really at the forefront of thinking about these big questions about the ethics and the responsible use of AI. And so Gartner Research writes a lot about what are some of the common ethical principles we should be thinking about as it pertains to responsible AI. What are some of the practices? What are some of the toolkits? What are some of the technologies? How do I need to train my people in how to think about AI ethically and responsibly? So at Gartner Consulting, we take all of that wonderful research that is published, and we actually advise our clients on how we advise and assist our clients in putting those practices into actual use on the ground. And what do I mean by that? For example, I'm in the process of wrapping up an engagement with one of a state government, and we have taken the state government's priorities, their vision as it pertains to AI, and we said, okay, if this is your vision for how you want to use AI, what are the most important ethical principles that you want to put forth? Then in the absence of any other governance, these are the high-level boundaries that we're going to set for everyone across the state to use AI. We went through multiple workshops with multiple stakeholders and different agency representatives to align on those 5 major ethical considerations. And it's things like my panelists have talked about, do we have a human in the loop helping us make those decisions, because we don't want the machines to make the decisions. That's scary from a public perspective.
Yes.
Is it safe and secure? Are we being transparent? And are we able to explain it? So really thinking through how do we make these kind of ethereal and conceptual ideas like ethics real for a technology that is relatively fast moving. And at the end of the day, it comes down to, we want to make sure that we have set the right boundaries for the practitioners and for society to understand how this is being used by the government for the better good of the society.
Great, thank you. So, Roxy, as a public servant, and how are you considering the equity of AI and the responsible use of AI in the work that you do and like for your constituents? And how else would you like to talk about AI as well?
Well, thank you for the question. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Roxy Ndebumadu, and I have the pleasure of serving as councilwoman for the greatest city of Bowie, Maryland, which we will all be willing to welcome you to come buy homes in. So just put a pin out there for your awareness. That I consider my nighttime job. I also have the pleasure of running an AI behavioral health startup called Rox Health. And so I look at this in the mental health landscape as well in terms of how we leverage artificial intelligence to inform the way that we interact with our users. So for the first part of the question, how are we thinking about it in the city of Bowie? One of the things that I have been pushing for over the last couple of years that has become a much more prevalent conversation across our different departments is to take a step back and not be so much in a rush to adopt AI just haphazardly. So this year, during this budget cycle, we established an AI task force to really work with the public, our constituency, to identify key use cases throughout all of our departments on how we can be leveraging AI. So is that public works? Is that more on transportation? Is that more on urban planning? Is that more on our police force? And so for me, it was really important for us to have that public engagement because it's not just about our internal stakeholders and the way that we think about AI as a municipality, but it's also how is the public going to interact with this technology? If our police force is adopting AI tools, what does that mean for our constituency and the demographics of our population and the data sets that they're leveraging to be able to now enact or enforce or leverage different things for our population? So for us, we took a step back and said, okay, wait a minute. We need to figure out what are those key use cases that are important to our constituency to then now establish responsible frameworks to engage the right partners like the Microsofts of the world and the Gartners of the world to now figure out what does that look like for us in a practical setting to adopt these technologies across our landscapes. And then I think for me, the way that I think about it as a business in the healthcare landscape is two things. It's very important for me to think about responsible and ethical AI on our testing and validation. Because when we're thinking about mental health and you have people who are interacting with the technology in the most intimate setting, it's really important for me to make sure that when we are, whether that's diagnosing or depicting your sentiment or figuring out where you are from an emotional perspective, that we have diverse data sets that are able to depict the right sentiment that is culturally relevant for you. It's not the sentiment of data sets that are agnostic to your culture or agnostic to your features or agnostic to the intricacies of who you are as an individual. It's more about how is this culturally relevant for you and is this the right sentiment for you? So what that looks like is we have clinical oversight. So we do have a lot of licensed clinicians that we work with that essentially that provide oversight over our technology to make sure that the sentiment that we're depicting is accurate to the user. And then on the second part of that, we have a multidisciplinary council that informs the way that we look at artificial intelligence and how we're incorporating that into our tool set. So what that means in a practical setting is we have social workers that serve on this multidisciplinary committee. We have neuroscientists, we have clinicians, we have ethicists, we have economists, we have all these different people that are deeply knowledgeable about the different facets of society to make sure that we're taking an informed and I guess you would say, manageable approach to how we incorporate artificial intelligence and the way that it's affecting society today.
Thank you. That is great. Does the audience have any questions for us right now? Yes, ma'am. He's going to bring you a mic around. Just 1 second.
Hand up, please.
Hi again, I'm Cam Red. I work for the Department of Public Works and Transportation. My question about the equity is, when I think about equity, I also think about inclusivity. And I don't see a world where AI is going anywhere. Technology is moving very quickly and very much being integrated into our lives. And I wonder and worry about those whose technology is not very integrated in their lives, in their workforce, in their standard learning, I feel like they're getting left behind because we're not thinking about them very much. Do we have like a responsibility to teach them? I'm just wondering like how do we become more inclusive?
That is a great question.
I am very passionate about this question, mainly because I'm in the process of writing an op-ed for the Atlantic Council on AI readiness, because it has been my perspective as an elected official. I'm privileged because I've worked in big tech, so I understand the inner workings of it. But when I interact my constituency, I get messages from a lot of seniors who are like, or just anyone in general who are like, where do I start to even begin to unpack this? What does that look like? Like, it's not realistic that everybody uses ChatGPT or even knows how to ask the right questions to get the right responses that they're looking for. And so I think for us, really where we're focusing on, and a priority that was just placed in on this budget cycle, was upskilling and readiness for artificial intelligence. And what does that look like in a practical setting for your everyday life? And I know that Amy will touch on this from the Microsoft perspective and some of the tools that they have out there, but for us, it's about being able to provide that awareness and that learning. So we established a partnership with Coursera. I led that about 3 years ago, where we provided free access to Coursera to our constituency. And we worked with Coursera to curate direct learning paths on the areas of technology that were moving the quickest. And so for 500 members within our constituency, you had the opportunity to get these certificates and take these deep learning experiences, but then at the end of the day, be matched with a recruiter to now explore what does that look like for you in terms of the transition of our workforce. And so I think for me, the way that I think about it as a city council member is really making sure that we are providing the resources and we're partnering with the right institutions that are out there, like the Coursera's, like the Microsofts, like the others out there, to really make sure that we are upskilling our constituency in a way to understand what does that look like. If I'm a project manager, what does it look like to incorporate AI in my role, just little by little every single day? If I'm a customer service worker, what does that look like to really augment my capacity, so I'm not worried about the tactical stuff, and now I can focus on the problem solving or the customer interaction or, you know, the strategic initiatives that need to happen to really make sure that we're meeting the demands of the community. So that's how I think about it.
So this is a great hot topic issue because we love talking about education and learning and skilling for AI. You might have heard my colleague earlier talking about how it needs to even start at the K through 12 level, a lot of just basic education, but also a lot of it's just experience. People need more opportunities to experience the technology for themselves. Now, on the plus side or the downside, this is two sides of the same coin, I think people are going to be engaging with AI almost whether or not they want to. They're going to buy a new phone. That phone's going to have AI capability into it. They're going to use an app. It's going to have AI capability built into it. Heck, now even Google has changed their search interface as of, I think, yesterday, where when you type a search now, you enter a prompt. So it's crazy how even people's daily activities are becoming AI enabled. As part of our AI Today podcast, we have a whole series called, like, what does the future look like when AI is part of our everyday experience? It's the AI-enabled vision of the future. And it changes a lot from the way we learn, the way that we interact with services in the government, the way that we do our job, but also even creativity, the way people do work. And I think that AI is actually not in the future anymore. The AI is in our present. And I think it behooves all of us to realize how transformative AI is. And as you know, with all transformation, it has both positive impacts and negative impacts. Transformation is disruptive, societally and personally. And I think we all need to understand that's part of why we've been so involved in some of these trustworthy things, that disruption, is, there's the sword that cuts both ways or whatever. And I think we need to all be on both sides of that. So great question. I think it's core to everything that we're all focusing on.
I'll add two other thoughts. I think it's some of the things that we talked about earlier, in the sense that if AI improves efficiency so that some of your constituents or employees can sort of self-service, can serve themselves, it also leaves the workforce for the county available to help the people who need more help. So it allows more time to support the people who might not have the technical skills, to bring them along, to give them a little bit of extra care and feeding. And then the other piece of inclusion is I think there are a number of ways that AI is going to help us be more inclusive. We talked a little bit earlier about all the additional languages, right? So the translation capabilities. So all of a sudden being able to provide the same information very quickly in 140 plus languages. Enabling people who are vision impaired because of the ability for AI to sort of read out what it sees in a photograph. And so it's just what you were just saying, I completely agree. It's two sides of the same coin, but I think in this case, maybe I'm biased, I think that a lot of the advantages are going to outweigh some of the leave behinds, but we still want to bring them along for sure.
Did you have anything to add? Okay. I have that question was a great segue to this next one, and I'll pose this to everyone. How can AI be used to empower marginalized communities and amplify their voices in decision-making processes, policy development, and civic engagement? Who wants to tackle that first?
I guess I'll start. I think, you know, we all live on the same planet. We all, you know, we live in this community as well. And I mean, I have a lot of love for Prince George's County in particular because we used to run this technology demo series. I'm going to do the shout out for Tech Breakfast. I don't know if anybody remembers the days of Tech Breakfast, but it was just an event where people who were working on cool technology could come and demo what they're working on. I think what's great is that the innovation comes from everywhere. Innovation comes from like every corner, from people who either have access, don't have access. There's a lot of great capability here. And I think that one of the things that I do like about this generative AI movement, because for a while with AI, you actually needed to have technical skill to really make the most use of AI. You need to be a data scientist or machine learning engineer or a coder. But generative AI has kind of cracked the code in some ways because now you don't need to be a developer, you don't need to be a data scientist. It's done what a lot of people call cross the chasm, if you've ever heard that expression, where it's gone from just like a small group of innovators who know how to make magical use of the incantations of technology. It's crossed the chasm now where anybody who can type something into a prompt can have all the opportunities. So actually, ironically, the challenge now is not technical literacy, it's almost like creativity and communication and critical thinking. It's like, hey, it's brought, you know, a lot of, fundamental, literacy and like just ideas of just like communicating better back into vogue, which is cool for all of our liberal arts majors. So I think there's opportunity there, and I think the challenge is really again about providing opportunities and providing exposure and providing people experience, at all levels of where people are at, and then just like harnessing like the inherent power of this powerful and sometimes scary technology that's out there.
Yeah, if I could just riff on what you said, because I think those are all amazing points, because now it's not that I'm going to sit at my computer, I'm going to pull up a Python prompt, and I'm going to start to pull up the right packages and make sure that I can create this data visualization with all of the correct statistical packages, right? We don't have to do that anymore. Like, we don't have to train people to do all those things. We train people to go to ChatGPT, and it's much easier now that we can put a prompt into ChatGPT and translate something into 100 languages. Like, that is incredible power and reach that I think we've never had before in the easiest way, in the most accessible way. So the challenge for all of us is like, how do we educate people? How do we train people to use this responsibly and not go to the dark side of the internet, right? And that's what we're talking about here. But just the power and potential to bring people together, like we see with all amazing technology revolutions, like the internet, how it brought everyone closer together and made us feel more connected. This is another way for us to be able to put something at the hands of a very broad swath of people to be able to do really cool, amazing things that we probably didn't even think about, even maybe in like October of, 2023, when ChatGPT came out and just made a huge splash. And, before that, it was oh, that seems like science fiction. We're going to watch that in a movie. And then, November, December of 2023, that's all anyone is talking about. And this is the power, and this is what we're all grappling with now. Like, how do we actually harness this, and how can we harness it for the good? Because there's so much potential out there.
Absolutely. Roxy, yes.
I'm just like very passionate about this entire conversation. I'm like, I don't even know where to start. I'm so excited. But I know, exactly. We're just going to keep talking about AI. Let me go back to the last question really quickly, because there's one point I forgot to mention on the K through 12 point. So for everybody in this room, I don't know if you know, but we do have Bowie STEM Academy that is opening in August of 2024 of this year. It was passed in December. I have been working on that for the last 2 years. It starts at the K grade level, and it is a public charter school. And it is heavily focused on STEM and project-based learning, and really making sure that children in the Prince George's County region are exposed to innovative technologies from kindergarten. Like, it is something that we have been fighting for so many years, and it finally came to fruition. What's happening is that they are building their full-time location that eventually will go to the high school grade level, knock, knock, that it is going to get there. That's not proof for it currently, but it's only through 8. But I'm speaking to existence, that they'll build their full-out location in District 4 right on the 301 corridor, but they'll open in a temporary location for this year. So I do want you to know that's part of what we are working on, to make sure that early exposure to technologies, disruptive both and innovative, are out there for our populations. The second part that I really wanted to go into, in terms of this idea of like giving us more empowerment, I think about quality of life when it comes to my constituency so much. And I believe it is my responsibility as a public servant to enable you and ensure that you are aware of the things that are out there that could impact your quality of life and give you the capacity to be and do and dream the way that you deserve to do so. And when I think about the technologies that are out there and how it's being adopted in the community, I'm so proud, because even when you think about education, which you talked about, the personalization and the cultural sensitivity that's being taken account to really be able to target that achievement gap, specifically for our communities, is so powerful. Because one of the reasons why I was so passionate about establishing that STEM Academy is because when I went to big tech, I saw that a lot of underrepresented communities were not able to thrive that competitively, because a lot of this exposure to these technologies that we are talking about up here, we didn't have. I didn't have that at Bowie High School. I didn't have that at Largo High School, and arguably I didn't have it at Howard University when I was there. So then when I got to the Microsofts and the Amazons of the world, it was like, oh, what's this thing that you're talking about? Like, I've never seen it. Like, what are you talking about? And it became a learning curve. And then it was like the haves and the have-nots, and it was the knows and the did not knows. And so part of everything that we're talking about, and why I feel so passionate about this, it's my responsibility as a public servant, as a municipal government, to enable you with the technologies and empower you to know what technologies are out there and the speed in which it is moving in, so you can choose how to adopt it for your quality of life. Because you may not want to be a neuroscientist tomorrow. You may not ever want to be a data scientist. But what's so important about tools like Copilot, Pi, ChatGPT, is that it empowers you with unprecedented knowledge at your fingertips to do whatever it is that you want to. So if I want to code a line of code tomorrow, I can do it. I can do it tonight, quite frankly, and build any type of application that I wanted to because of these tools that are out here at my fingertips. And then also, controversial take. A lot of people don't know this, but I'm telling you secrets because we're in the company of friends. My last election in 2023, when I ran for city council, was powered by Copilot, quite frankly. It wrote most of it. Most of the language, of course, like, there was human oversight. I read over everything and put it in my voice and my tone, and I told it what I wanted it to do. So, like, it was a collaborative partnership between me and artificial intelligence. But it empowered me to be able to run for local office. And so when we talk about these technologies and these tools that are out there that are empowering our communities, these are tangible examples of how it's setting us apart, how it's working on that it's diminishing that achievement gap and empowering us and putting us in positions of power to be able to thrive and also equally compete in ways that we haven't been able to before.
That's impressive. And I saw Ron shaking his head. I think that's impressive, and it shows like a good use of the technology. And you come across as someone that's very engaged in the community, have the interests of your constituents at heart. So I view that as a good thing. Yes, ma'am. He's going to bring the mic to you. Just one moment.
Thank you. So I have a question when we talk about marginalized communities, and this is more of a process question, so I'm looking for some suggestions. I work for the health department, and part of the responsibility of some of my staff is to go out into the community and to identify people who require who need help with, social needs, or to ensure that they have a medical home, if they have chronic health conditions, making sure that we're providing services or resources to support them. It's been a challenge for us. We have pockets, segments of our community, of course, that speak languages that are not written language. We have those that speak languages other than English and Spanish, French and a lot of different African languages. So my question to you is, how can we utilize AI, more so if you have any examples of what we can use, to really target those communities and have all of our, well, not all, but our communications team back here to even create messages so that they understand that we are here to support them and to help them, that the services are free, but it is our responsibility, even though we're a government entity, to really provide them with these supports. So do you have any ideas or examples?
That's a great question.
In my head, I was thinking to the earlier question about we were just having a conversation about having a promptathon. And so one of the ways that we've been sort of, we find in events like this and any conversation that we have, everyone's at different points along the journey, right? And it's sort of understanding what AI is, how it can help them. And even for me, it's sort of layered understanding. And so I think with the promptathon idea, the idea is you could almost pick a particular topic or, whether it's access to STEM education or something, access to health resources, and helping people sort of expand their minds about like you just rattled off a bunch of different things that, I think about medical support, but there's a bunch of other things that are included in the services that you guys can provide. And so I wonder if you can use AI as a tool to help people sort of understand the breadth of supports that you guys can provide from a convening perspective. Certainly there's the language component of it, and so how do you help people, just help in straight up communications with people. I'm wary but curious. If you have a particular message that you want to get out, you wonder if you could ask a tool like Copilot to generate messages that would resonate with the Haitian Creole community or something like that. Because of the conversations we've had about hallucination and stuff like that, right? We can come up with, I think you'd want to test it with the community, but to the extent that you have residents who are willing to give you feedback and stuff, what's awesome about it is that it could generate, you can tell it to generate 10 different ideas with imagery, and you could imagine coming up with a bunch of slides. If you have access to Copilot that's built into PowerPoint even, you can list out a bunch of ideas in Word and say, create a PowerPoint deck for this, and then you'd have an individual slide with some of these different images. There's a bunch of things like that would allow you to get very quickly from sort of what you just described to actual concepts that your constituents and residents could react to more quickly. You could probably then use AI somehow to gather feedback, right? We could come up with some creative application that would allow people to give you feedback on an ongoing basis. I don't know, I could keep going on and on. But I think, to me, the most valuable piece would be generating some actual images and messaging that you could get quick feedback on and know if it's resonating. But I definitely want to check it with the community and the culture that you're sharing it with.
Roxy?
There's one thing that I want to add to support everything that Amy said, just to kind of zoom out for a second. When I started Rock's Health, probably 2 months ago, part of it was really around the social stigma around people getting help. And we saw that that was so prevalent and so high. And let me just give you numbers. 60% of those who are like living within society today attribute not getting help to a social stigma. 60%. That's more than half of the population. And so I think when you have that context and you sit with that and you know, it's now about how do I destigmatize the idea of getting help to now appeal to what it is that you need and how I can uniquely empower you. So I know how we do it, since a lot of people are not interested in the idea of getting help. We appeal to skills development and personal development because everybody wants to be the best version of themselves no matter what. Like no matter what you say out here, everybody wants to know how to do the thing that they want to do. And so that's how we get around destigmatizing the idea of getting mental health, because it's more focused on skills development for the person that interacts with us. And from there, we're able to like depict your emotion. We're able to depict your unique triggers and now, determine what that plan is to now get you the feedback that you need to now do the thing better so you can see results. Because I think part of it, when I see from my constituency, the challenge around even when they get help, it's, oh, this help didn't work for me. So now why am I even wasting my time doing this? Because I already feel ashamed around getting the help. And now that I got the help, it didn't work. So now I'm going through this loop of just feeling horrible internally. So I think when we just zoom out and just understand that context of what's plaguing society, because I'm very passionate about really making sure that I stay up on the pulse of societal sentiments in terms of where people are. Of course, we're a resilient community, but at the end of the day, we're in a huge election. We're struggling with all these different things, whether that is people dealing with rising healthcare costs or inflation or whatever have you, or educational outputs in Prince George's County. And I think taking all of those things into context and now breaking it down by the demographic and saying, okay, now what is this unique demographics struggling with? And AI can give you an idea of that. Like you can do that research and get that sentiment in that way so that you can now start to now zoom back in to figure out, like, now that I have X population and I understand that most people don't get help in underserved populations because of social stigmas. How do I destigmatize that and craft messaging that's unique to your circumstance so I can speak to you in an authentic manner and capture you to now reel you in to uniquely understand what you're struggling with and now provide that pathway for you to get the help that you need with the services that we have to offer.
To speak to your question about the translation, because you have a lot of different ethnicities that speak different languages. AI is a rapidly growing field. It's very fertile. So the technology is there now to live translate. But it has to be vetted to be HIPAA compliant. To work in a healthcare setting, it has to be vetted to be HIPAA compliant. It has to be trained on that specific use case. So it's hard to project, or predict how far it is in the future to actually get it live and into your, community service workers' hands or your field agents' hands, but the technology is there like today. Are there any other questions from the audience right now? Because I have a couple that I want to pose. The first one is, what ethical frameworks or guidelines should organizations and policymakers consider and adhere to when designing and implementing AI systems, because we want to uphold like human rights, privacy, and dignity?
The first one that we always, obviously Microsoft has a bunch of options, but the NIST AI framework is the one that we usually point to as sort of the gold standard.
I'm sorry, what was it?
The NIST AI framework, and it's shockingly very consistent with a lot of the principles that I listed before that Microsoft espouses and are focused on.
So the NIST, that's the AI Risk Management Framework. There you go. Gotcha. And it primarily focuses on levels of risk. So basically what you do is it take whatever your AI systems, and it helps you quantify them as a low-risk system, a medium, or high risk, or like, don't do this ever situation. And then basically once you sort of figure that out, then you can kind of figure out how whatever you're doing with AI kind of fits into that. Beyond that, this is where the trustworthy AI framework, this is the stuff that the coming out of regulation. So if you're looking at how you use the AI, so let's say you're not building the AI system, but you're using it, there's a whole bunch of things that you have to do, consider in use. For example, don't upload personal information to public AI models because you don't know where that's going to go, right? And some of it has to do really more with like training and learning. So for example, we've all learned not to click on links that we get in email. We've all hopefully gotten better at that. But we need to now learn all these new habits with AI, like don't point that camera at things because there may be an automatic recognition system in it, because now they're all getting to be automatic recognition. Now the ChatGPT systems have automatic listening with automatic transformation. So maybe phones on during meetings might become more of an issue, especially if there's live translation going onto the cloud. And you might think, what's wrong with that? It's like your live meeting conversation is going onto the cloud right now to be transcribed and translated. That may have some impact on your own corporate privacy policy. There's things people don't think about yet. So there's a whole bunch of things around the EU. In part, the European Union, for better or for worse, is a little ahead of the US and other places. A little, like a lot, right? And so if you look for what's called the Trustworthy AI Framework, it'll talk about all these additional things that are more around the usage of AI systems, the implementation of AI systems, and then they classify things in a few other ways. They talk about things like, as in permissive uses, restrictive uses, and areas that need some guidance. So there's actually, honestly, there's a lot of work going on right now. We're kind of all in the same world at the same time. Things are moving fast for everybody. And as we like to talk about on our AI Today podcast, the problem with laws and regulations is, do you wait for things to happen before you pass laws and regulations because you don't know how people are using the technology? Or do you try to get ahead of it by trying to put in some laws and regulations and policies before people do things, but then you have to kind of guess where people are at, and it's kind of a difficult place. I'm glad I'm not a policy maker.
I think from a Gartner perspective, and like foot stomp everything my esteemed colleagues here have said, from a Gartner perspective, we also like to think of, if I pull back, I once had a client say, could you explain what you mean, but the difference between ethical AI versus responsible AI? It's like, that is a fantastic question. And I had to step back for a second and think about it. It's like, so ethics are the things that we can all as humans understand and agree upon, right? Like an example we talked about earlier is like, this needs to be trustworthy. Like that is a good ethical principle. We understand basically what a trustworthy system is. And the responsible AI piece is, how do we put that into practice? Because how we put that into practice is going to involve a lot of other things that my colleagues have talked about. There's governance pieces, there's training pieces, there's technology pieces. So there's a big umbrella around responsible AI. So if we think about like ethical frameworks and how do we like put in a good methodology for the use and adoption of AI for our organizations, first we really have to hone in on what are the most important ethical principles for our organization. Because until we can agree upon those things, we could put in a different responsible AI toolkit or framework, or name your buzzword, that may not align with what we are actually most concerned about. And I think the one that I hear about a lot from state and local government leaders is the data privacy piece. Like that is a huge, okay, sorry, let me back up. So we got to figure out ethics, we got to think about responsibilities, because then we can identify risks as well. Because the risk that I hear a lot about from state and local government leaders is, what about data privacy? Because everyone at the state and local government level has like very specific, like it's in healthcare, educational data, HR data, like these are really, really important things. And so if we think, from front end, like big picture, what do I care about? How do I manage it? And what are the biggest risks? I think that is kind of the framework that we at Gartner are helping people think through, kind of at the macro level.
Great. Do you have any comments?
I'll throw in an interesting story anecdote. So do you remember all when Amazon, the Alexa device first came out, and people were like, oh, it's this crazy little hockey puck that I can talk to, and I can ask, like, what's the weather, and can you please make some fart sounds? That's what people did with Alexa Echo all day, with the Alexa device. Well, people were concerned. They're like, hey, I have this device sitting on my desk. It's like an open microphone. It's just going to listen to everything and send everything on the net to Amazon. And we're like, I'm not sure I could trust Amazon with all the audio. And then Amazon had to come out with a statement, and it turns out it was true, whether or not you believe them. They're like, no, we're not actually sending the actual audio from your Alexa device up to Amazon, and then we're decoding it there. It's actually happening on your device. So we have like a little thing on the device that's doing the voice, your transcription, and it's only sending to Amazon what your intent, basically what you're asking for, which is why Alexa's so dumb, by the way, because it doesn't actually have that capability because of the privacy regulations. It's not actually sending all of your audio to Amazon. It's trying to do it on your little hockey puck. That's why it's so smart. So, and it's only got so many words that it knows. So, but here's the irony of it now. Now we're in a situation with ChatGPT and the latest version, especially if you saw the announcement this week of the 4.0, where you can actually have a live conversation with your phone, and your audio is being streamed in real time to the ChatGPT, the OpenAI servers. And the funny thing is, like, what happened to all the questions that we were asking when we were concerned about the Alexa device? No one's asking those questions now. I'm like, hey guys, I think now is the time for us to be asking, do we want to be sending all of this audio to OpenAI? And I have a lot of concerns about that, and I'm wondering why we don't have those questions anymore. So,
I think this is just my opinion, I think the questions are still there. I think because it was 2 days ago, a lot of people probably don't know about it other than the people that really have their ear to the ground to like what's going on with AI. I think there are going to be questions that bubble up as people continue to have these conversations with their friends, like, oh my God, did you see what ChatGPT can do? And I think Gemini does it now as well. So yeah, exciting times. Are there any other questions from the audience? We have a couple of more minutes to go, so I wanted to make sure that I cater to you all's questions. I do have a final question to close us out. What ways can civil society organizations, academia, and government agencies all collaborate and work together to develop and implement regulations and standards that promote equitable and responsible AI use? Whoever wants to take it first.
I have the pleasure of working in a bunch of different states with a lot of different governments, and I think everyone is really grappling with this sort of acceptable use policy. And I've seen sort of the full gamut. And I think the challenge that we have right now is sort of what you were alluding to or what you just said, that there needs to be a policy. There need to be some guardrails and sort of agreed terms on which we think what's acceptable to use AI for. At the same time, we don't want to stifle innovation, and there's a state that shall remain nameless, but has basically blocked AI originally for 6 months. It's now been 15 months, and they're trying to come up with an acceptable use policy that I think they're trying to boil the ocean, and so I think there's sort of a happy medium somewhere in there where we need to partner on that, right? So I think that there's a first phase of an Office of Technology that can draft something, but having sort of civil society, constituent feedback is really, really critical to every step. The technology, we keep saying this, but it's changing so rapidly that I think just getting into the habit of iterating on these acceptable use policies, I think is what's going to make us most successful in the long run.
That's a great point, because it's changing at the speed of light every week.
And we're all like learning constantly. Yes.
I'll just probably add something small on that, is that, yes, whenever you're in this environment of constant change, the general motto is think big, start small, and iterate often. And I think that's the thing about the boiling the ocean approach. It doesn't work because you try to do everything all at once, and things are constantly changing. So I think from our perspective, because we serve more as advisors. We provide the research. We're doing so much work with so many different organizations. As mentioned, we're doing work on the international scale, the state, the local, and the federal level as well. And, you know, for example, blanket bans on the use of generative AI and ChatGPT, that's not practical for many reasons, because people are going to use it anyways on their own device, or because it's going to become embedded in software that it's there, whether or not they want to use it. So blanket bans don't work. So you just we need to figure out how to put in, as you mentioned, acceptable use policies, guardrails, and also ways that we can do a lot of training and education. I think it really comes down to education and making people aware of the limitations, making aware of their possibilities, making aware of sort of the challenges. And I think that'll help everybody gain more comfort, if you will, and then I think we'll be in a better place for putting some more practical, real-world policies together.
I think that's helpful.
I think the only thing I would add is, and just really just an addendum to what you said, is it has to be a dialogue, right? That it has to be a dialogue between what does society need and what are the capabilities of the technology? Because I think there is a big gap between, like, we're building Skynet, it's coming for us, we're all doomed, like, it's Minority Report and The Matrix with Agent Smith, all of these, like, doomsday kind of, like, AI scenarios. And the but it's not that, you know, like, it's ChatGPT can be used for, like, very basic, really cool, really helpful things. And so having that dialogue of we're not doing these doomsday scenarios, we're trying to support productivity, we're trying to allow people to focus on higher level tasks. And then the dialogue back to, you know, society and to our government partners is, what do you need the technology to do? And we're not trying to keep all of your data. We can set up the right guardrails, we can set up the right firewalls to make sure that your data is your data, and then be able to have those communications back to society. Like, yes, we're using this technology and here's how we're using it safely. Because, like, the longer we wait, the further ahead the technology gets, and we're always playing catch up, which I think is the challenge. So I think it's a lot of dialogue, it's a lot of communication, understanding the why behind what we're doing.
I agree. And final thoughts from Roxy.
I would say that I agree with everything that has already been said up here. I think it's very clear that we have guidelines, but I think stronger governance is needed in a way that, like everyone is saying, doesn't stifle innovation, keeps human-centered values at the heart and at the core of everything that we're trying to accomplish. Because I think the reality of it, when you look at a lot of these other countries out here, they are quickly surpassing us in the landscape of innovation. However, we possess 10 times better human ingenuity than they do. And so when I sit back and I look at my constituencies and I ask myself, why is this happening? It's a couple of things. Public engagement. What does that mean for you? When we are doing these things as local government, I need you guys to show up, especially when it has to do with innovation and technology and AI. Because if we don't understand what it is that you're grappling with or what you're focused on in your everyday, there's no way that we could be adopting and incorporating policies or technologies that have human-centered values. Because we're not genies. We're not here to predict what it is that you're doing. We're here to understand and leverage and be the best advocates for you that we can be. So it's public engagement. The second part is, it's directing the funding in the right places. It's up to you guys to speak up and to tell us that you want us to prioritize AI. It's up to you to speak up and tell us that you want transformation offices so that we can be very clear and intentional about establishing the right use cases that align with things that support and augment your everyday life so that you don't have to get stuck in the tactical, so you don't have to run over the pothole and be frustrated that nobody came out to fix the pothole for 2 weeks when we could have been leveraging IoT to identify that there was a pothole there in the first place. Like, it's up to you to tell us that you want those things so that we can make sure that we're wielding and directing the resources to be able to do that. And I think the last thing is, it's up to you to continue to leverage these technologies. Gone are the days that we can say, oh, we're not going to use it because AI is coming for us and it's doomsday and oh my goodness, we're going to stay away from it. We can no longer cease to exist in that world, because the reality is it is very one-sided of us to say we need inclusive data sets. If you're not users of the technology, it doesn't really make sense, does it? So how can we expect companies or academic institutions to include you in R&D if you don't want to be users of the products? It doesn't make sense. And so we need you to engage in public engagement, direct your elected officials to wield money in the right places, and then be users of these innovative technologies so that you can help us advocate for the refinements and the iterations that you need to see in the community to be able to scale human ingenuity and augment your capacity so that you can live the quality of life that you deserve.
Thank you. This has been a really engaging dialogue on equity and responsible use of AI. I thank you all, Roxy, Krista, Ron, Amy. Thank you for participating today, and thank you all for the engaging questions.